We're live, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Democratic Service Committee meeting, 6th of September. And the first item on the agenda is apologies.
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillors Martin Grocott and Matt Feekins.
Right, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest?
Chair, could I just, I'm not sure if Councillor Clark is with us. If he's not, could I give his apologies, please?
Right.
Thank you.
But he still could turn up, could he?
Yes, I understand so.
Right. Right. Item 3 is the petition system. Do you want to come in on that, John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this item covers a public participation scheme and a petition scheme as well. Both are required under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act. They don't take effect until next May, so they'll come into force at next May's elections. That it's a statutory requirement that as a council we have to have one. But we've been working on the ability to have E-petitions submitted to the council rather than our standard paper submissions that normally come in. So we've taken the opportunity to pull together a public participation strategy and a petition scheme, and we'll put them all into one document. The covering report there just sort of states what's in the legislation that we have to include within our public participation strategy and petition scheme. So they include ways of promoting awareness among local people of what the council does, how to become a member of the council and what membership entails, how they can access decisions and information, how people can actually get involved with the council, etc. So they're all on the front of the report there. And then just in terms of the petitions, we have to include how a petition is going to be submitted, how and when we acknowledge receipt of the petition, and what steps we will take when a petition meets a certain level of criteria that we'll come on to discuss. So we pulled together the public participation strategy. It's taken from a document that we had on the website already that detailed information on what each committee covers and how its membership is made up, and we've sort of expanded on that to include more things around how to become a councillor, what a councillor does, how to ask questions at council, voting at elections obviously, and we've expanded that obviously again with the petition scheme at the end. I think the first point that members will be interested in is the submit a question to council bit that we've adapted. So in there we're including that the deadline for questions to be submitted to council is 3 working days before the meeting starts. So at the minute it's currently 7 days, which is before the agenda is published. So no member of the public could ask a question that's relevant to that agenda item. And I know it's something we've been discussing for a while about changing and getting it changed from the Constitution. So that deadline's been put in there, so I welcome your views on whether that's appropriate. What we'll do with the Constitution is we'll reference the public participation strategy as a required document that we have to now have, as being detailing how members of the public can interact with the council, and then that'll give us as a committee a bit more flexibility in terms of adjusting these bits going forward, and whether they're appropriate without needing to review the Constitution as a whole. The final bit and the real meat of the discussion that I'd like members to have today is what we do with the petition, and what sort of support it needs to have. So I've highlighted just in the document in an orange box there a discussion point for us, and it looks at what sort of level of support should a petition need before we do something with it. So just examples there, if a petition, someone submits a petition on our website and we get nothing, or they get less than 50 supporters for it, should we then act upon it, or should we just note it? If it gets over 50, should we then do something with it? Is a response from a chief officer appropriate, or should it be always come into full council? Maybe a select committee is a better option for the petitions to be received at, so they can discuss and debate whether it needs a recommendation from a select up to cabinet or up to council. So really, I'd welcome your views on how you think that would be appropriate and what we should be included in there. And then anything else to do with the petition scheme and the public participation strategy. But as I say, it's not coming into effect until May next year. So the plan with this for the moment is that we'll agree it as a committee. We won't take it forward to council until later on in the year, once we know what the statutory guidance is from Welsh Government on what we have to include, because that's not available to us yet. So it's going to be along these lines, but if we need to adapt it, we'll keep it here with the committee until we're at such a point where we're ready to hand it over to council to formally adopt it. But these changes will come in now, and we'll work it through in practice as we go along. So over to members.
Tony's got his hand up.
Tony, you've got your hand up. You're on. Tony?
Sorry, I was out in the garden. Yes, the 3-day notice of questions to council, I think, is a good move, but that doesn't change the fact that the chair could still accept emergency questions, which may or may not be relevant to the agenda, which we may be less than 3 days. So I think that needs clarifying. Regarding the petitions, I'm a bit lost as to. I shouldn't be lost, really. I understand that if you're a councillor, you can bring a petition to council, present it to council, but I'm not really sure how we develop the one which could be 50 members, or up to 250, in how they would come to council or to council as a petition. Would they go straight to officers, to members of the public, or a member of the public on behalf of 50 or 60 people? What is the way on that, John, do you reckon?
Yeah, perhaps I should have explained how the petitions will actually work in practice, and make it a bit clearer. So there'll be a section on the council website where members of the public can register with us and submit their own petitions. They'll then come through to us as a democratic services team. We'll assess whether it's something we can consider a petition on, and make sure that it's suitable for publication. And then at that point, it'll be on the petitioner to share that link with anybody else who wants to register and support their petition. So they'll give a link to everybody else. They'll register, sign in, and show their support. And then there'll be a pot basically on the website of all petitions that come in, and it'll show the level of support for each item. We can obviously use paper versions as well, and we can add manual signatories to those electronic petitions as well, so we can accept both. It just expands on the petition scheme itself. And again, so this is why I'm putting those sorts of questions to you around what level it is, because we'll just have a pot of petitions that will be sat on the website, gathering support, and we'll have to act on it depending on what sort of level it supports it receives. We obviously don't want a petition coming to council or to a select committee where only a handful of people perhaps have signed it. It's working out what it is that is going to determine the level of support that's required for us to then take further action on something. Is that clearer, Tony?
Sort of. It seems to me it's very similar to E-Petitions to government, where you have 100,000 to a petition to be read in Parliament. I think it'd be slightly different for us as a council, in that we do bring petitions forward as councillors, which are not discussed at council, but accepted by council and taken to officers, as opposed to what I see as an E-Petition system, which could be independent of councillors, and it would follow a council procedure, which you just discussed.
So it's the procedure in the background at the minute that we haven't got in place. So the current system doesn't cover that. A councillor would still take that petition to council or present it to council, but it's not going to be a paper petition. It will just be you're bringing the item with those petitioners who've signed it in the background online. So yeah, very similar to the way the rest of the government e-petition schemes work. But again, you'd still bring something to council or to a select committee. Again, it doesn't have to go to council. And I think, is it appropriate at the minute for petitions to go to council, and then possibly is the right thing happening in the background off the back of you submitting a petition to council? does it need to go to a select committee possibly, where it then has the debate on the petition with the recommendations coming back to council as a result of that? It just seems a better loop to me that way than a councillor presenting their petition to full council and then not really being clear on what happens with it or where it goes and what happens with that discussion. So I'm looking to try and tighten up what we do with the petition and what are those triggers that mean we have to do something.
You okay with that, Tony?
Yeah, let's see what other members think. I got some mixed views on this, but yes, let's see what other members think.
All right then. Giles, you had your hand up?
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, first of all, I think the report's really useful. Well done for bringing that before us. And I think even if you're not looking at ways to interact, it's helpful in that it sets out the democratic process and the structure of meetings we have and their responsibilities. I think a concern for me would be how somebody might find this on the website if they were looking for it or perhaps didn't know it existed and needed the information within it. But regarding the petitions, one thing I'm mindful of in our county, and there are lots of small settlements, and if we set a threshold that's too high for a petition, then that might be unreasonable. So if you've got a small village and there's something that's of great importance to a small group of people, you wouldn't want to set a threshold of 50 like the Welsh Government if that meant no action was taken. I think a lot of this is going to have to be suck it and see. I mean, I think there's clearly a gatekeeping procedure that will stop us being overwhelmed by nonsense, and the monitoring officer will deal with that. I mean, I'd like to see the figure lower than 50. And again, the other thing to bear in mind is some people are very into social media, and a petition can grow very quickly because somebody shares something on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and before you know it, there's thousands of signatures. If you've got somebody who's just about okay with setting up a petition on a website, they're not going to have access to that. So again, it might not get the same sort of traction. But I think probably then what happens afterwards is relevant. And I recall having to during the council chamber having other members comment about not knowing what's happened with their petitions, and I think I've probably complained about that myself, and as Simon Howarth has, regarding Heads of the Valleys issues. So I think what I'd like to be clear about is once we have a petition and it's reached that threshold and we think it's a matter within the remit of the council or where we can exert some pressure, is I'd like to know who owns that petition until it gets reported back to members in one form or another. But otherwise, no, I think it's great, and thank you very much for presenting it to us.
Thank you, Giles. Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. It looks like others have raised my concerns regarding the petition part of this, so I won't cover that again. Looking at the actual strategy document, though, it contains more or less absolutely everything, but I was just wondering, just an observation, why it doesn't contain anything about the role of officers, MCC officers in this, in terms of full council, committee and general day-to-day.
Yeah, fair point. Absolutely. Hadn't thought about it. And I'll look to build something along those lines in.
Thank you.
Okay, that Christopher?
Yes, thanks.
Joanne?
Thank you very much. So I know that I've banged on about the problem with members of the public not being able to submit their questions on time, so I'm delighted that that's coming forwards. And I also think it's a really good idea that we have it that the Constitution refers to a document which is easier to amend rather than having to go through a constitutional amendment every time we want to try and make some sort of improvements in the democratic ways of working. So I think that's a really good way forward. So thank you very much for the work on that. That's great. In terms of the petitions, I really welcome the fact that we're going to be moving to some online petitions. I think that's great. I think the idea that you always have to make sure everything go through your local county councillor to get an issue put forward is a slightly out of date one. The members of the public many members of the public are quite capable of creating a petition and getting momentum behind it. And in fact, they might well find that easier than they would do finding engaging with their local representative. So I think that's a really useful way forwards for the future and to get direct input from members of the public. So I think that's great. In terms of the numbers, I was going to say 50, but Giles has won me over with the idea that small communities might actually be, it might be a really big issue for a very small community. So I don't think 50 is actually going to be the right number, but I'm not sure what is a good number. Yeah, that one is going to be a harder one to quantify, I would say. I personally would like petitions probably to sit with select committees rather than full council. And then select committees work on something and then it goes to council for that further feedback. I just think that there's more time in a select committee for you to actually discuss something. It's not then it would be based on the topic as well, which those particular members should have a greater input on. And if the local councillor wish to be involved in that, then they can come along and attend that particular select committee so that they would still have an input into this thing that was happening in their locale. So that would be where I would prefer it. I have often worried about what happens to a petition after it's gone to full council and then it just seems to vanish. Nothing ever seems to happen about it. There's no means of getting a feedback on that. If things sat with select committees, then at least we'd be able to have it referred to on maybe the forward work planner, that this is a list of the petitions that this committee has still got under its remit, and it just strikes me that would be a more manageable way to keep track of those issues, that maybe we can then start thinking about it and keep an eye on it and make sure that something is happening and that things don't just fall into the ocean of, yes, this is a lovely petition that's been submitted by these people and nothing is ever heard of again. So I do think select might be the right place for it, but the threshold, I'm sorry, the number threshold I am now uncertain. So that one I throw back to the committee for you for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Sheila?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of little points really. Regarding the public questions, the 3 days notice, we're currently doing that. It is already in our constitution. So this I just want to clarify that this applies to full council and select committee meetings. It's a good, excellent thing to have done, and I'm pleased that we are doing it. But I just wanted to clarify that does apply to all the various committees.
Yeah.
With regard to, sorry.
Yeah, it'll be across the board. But the constitution at the minute does state 7 days notice for public questions at full council. So that's the main thing we're looking to address with it, really. Okay,
as long as we're moving in the right direction, that's excellent. With regard to the e-petitions, yes, this is very, very interesting, because we really want to engage with our residents and we're constantly asking them for their feedback and how we can do better. This is a good step forward. We're always encouraging people to use my Monmouthshire and that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. I would like to see fewer than 50. I do agree with Giles. I think sometimes some people feel very strongly about a subject, but they haven't always got the time or the sort of ability to talk to their neighbours. So it would be good to think that we could lower that. Like everybody else, I don't know what the sort of a good number would be. I think we need to think about that perhaps a little bit. Or maybe we could have different categories of e-petitions for different numbers of people. And excellent point Joe made about follow-up with regard to petitions that come in. Yes, it would be good to have a trail of where petitions are leading to and what the outcomes of them are. So yes, I'm very keen to engage with the public, and I think this is a good step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Anybody else got any questions? No? Well, there's been some good points there, John.
Yeah, definitely. I'll take that away. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm getting the feeling from members that there's no objection. I mean, we'll leave it in there that members may present their own petitions to full council if they want to, but generally the feeling should be that petitions that reach whatever trigger level we set should go to selects for consideration. I mean, the way it works for Welsh Government obviously is they've got a barrier of 50 signatories, I think it is, before they consider it, but then they've got a dedicated permissions committee that looks at those petitions and decides whether they should take further action on it. So almost like what the selects would play, the role the selects would play then. We get a petition in, it goes to the select for their consideration, and then if there's action to be taken out of it, the recommendation will go to council or cabinet off the back of that. Is there any objections from members on that process, just so I'm clear?
Not from me, no.
I'll take the silence is good.
No,
So again, yeah, and in terms of the number of signatories, this is why we're doing it this way, really, is putting it into a scheme well ahead of statutory implementation and leaving it with the committee rather than sending it through to full council for final decision, just to see how it goes. I think Giles put it right, we'll suck it and see. If we lower it to say 25, which seems to be the theme sort of coming from members' responses, but we get inundated with petitions and we need to do something with it, then it'll be right for it to come back here and for us to reconsider what that trigger level should be and how we take it forward. So I think over the next couple of months, we'll see how it goes, bring it back for review as well before we put it forward to full council for adoption.
You all happy with that? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. Right. Item 4, members ICT survey.
Thanks, Chair. It's that time of the term really where we need to start thinking about the ICT requirements for members at the next term of council. So what this sort of report, I mean, it gives you an overview of where we are, how we come to giving everybody Surface Pros for this term of council, some of the considerations we need to take into account, and then just some questions that we're proposing to ask members on how they use their equipment, which will then allow us to go away and look at what's appropriate for members for the next term. I think it's worth noting that back in 2017, when we had the last set of elections, our IT again was in a different place where we had different members using different devices on different versions of Windows, and support was just becoming very difficult. Everybody having a Surface Pro has improved the level of service that I can provide you through my team, because everyone's got the same equipment and everyone can pick it up a lot quicker. Bearing that in mind going forward is a key issue really, but everybody now, no matter what device they're on, will be on Windows 10 and Office 365. So if you have a laptop or you had a Surface Pro, essentially we can support you in more or less the same way. Questions for the committee really is just, are those questions appropriate? Are they right? Is there anything else you want to add in so we can get a fuller picture on what it is that members want their IT to do? And then we'll bring it back at the next meeting of the committee with some options of what equipment's available,